Welcome to the Level Up Artist Podcast. We're your hosts, Adriana and
Jackie Sanders. We are two art professionals sharing forward the advice and business lessons we have learned along our creative journeys.
We talk to artists, leaders, and art professionals to demystify the creative process and discover new ways to succeed as a career-minded artist.
If you find value in these conversations, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you'll be notified when we drop a new episode every Tuesday. So on today's episode, we're going to take things a little slower pace and just share with you guys what we have been working on in our studios. Because in addition to hosting this podcast, interviewing amazing guests, and having great conversations between us, we are also full-time working artists in our own independent businesses. So that comes with a lot of fun projects and updates that we want to share with you guys to really share. We're in the trenches with you. We're working on juggling a million things just like you guys are. So Adriana, what have you been working on lately in your studio?
Woo! Murals, all things murals. So one of them was I recently worked with an artist that came down from Chicago. Her name's Allie Cantarella. She is amazing. And I helped her paint the interior of a bakery. Um, an interesting kind of bakery. But we did so many surfaces. Wow, that was a lot. That was very interesting. Um, also been working on something that for now I'm calling canvas murals. It's basically large unstretched polyflex canvas. So it's a blended fiber. It's made for interiors, and I'm thinking of it as being especially convenient for folks that are either in a rented office space or even in a home space. They're trying to figure out where to put it and don't want to commit to just one room, but it's much larger than say a regular painting on canvas, and it feels also more immersive when you're in front of it because you just kind of stand in and kind of almost walk into the painting. It's fantastic. I've also been working on creating some presentation materials for several interior designers in our area, some of which I've already started talking to, so I'm very excited to see what that will turn out to be. It's one of those things too where it's like this delicate balance of it still needs to be reflective of my artwork. So if it's something that could be on Pinterest or maybe another artist did it, I have to walk that careful line and say, thank you, but maybe I can find you somebody else that would do that.
So those are materials to like market yourself to those interior designers in terms of placing paintings in homes that they're designing, or like doing custom commissions for a space.
Correct.
Like that.
Correct. But yeah, I do have to craft it carefully to not just say like I'm a painter for hire. I will do decorative painting and that's it. It's more like it needs to be a reflection of my existing body of work. So therein lies the challenge. So more to come on that. I also have super duper duper excited in a few weeks, especially when this comes out. It'll be even closer. It'll be a couple weeks when this episode comes out. I'm going to the Dominican Republic with 20 other muralists for a mural meetup. Wow. I'm still pinching myself on that one. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be, not just because it's going to be my first official international mural, but also the opportunity to step away from my usual painting practice and network with other artists that are specifically focused on that. Looking forward to exchanging ideas. Obviously, I haven't been doing murals as long as some of them have. So looking forward to exchanging ideas on materials, on pitching clients, on just like how to get faster, how to use the sprayers, things like that. So there's going to be an educational component, a networking component, and then just straight up fun. So I'm looking forward to that. Let's see, what else am I working on? Holiday prep. I'm awaiting. People have been asking. I've mentioned it on the podcast too, but it's finally happening, people. Prints are finally happening. I know. I've gotten questions like, so your website mentions prints, but they're not on the store. And I'm like, yeah, because I took them off at one point. And, we've had conversations about products and, I've always been kind of on the fence a little bit, but I'm willing to try them again. So I'm bringing them in time for the holiday season. Um, they're currently hiding on my website, but by the time this comes out, they may not be out. Make sure you're on my newsletter if you're interested, because that's when they're going to come out first. But the print samples are on their way, as well as t-shirt samples. More on that later for sure. And I've been balancing the idea of whether or not to make smaller original work. So usually around the holidays, I'll make something smaller, not necessarily an ornament, but like smaller works on paper or on smaller panels. Try not to put too much pressure on myself as I normally do for the holidays this time. Trying to kind of lean a little bit more on the products, and see how we go with that, and on other services, like if I'm doing, larger artwork, like the murals or commission work. So I'm trying to take a little bit of that pressure off of I have to produce something holiday specific. And then last but not least, I mean, there's definitely more on the list, right? But like last but not least, to keep it as concise and brief as humanly possible, sculptures. So the largest one is in progress, coming out of the kiln. So I'm very, very excited. Have sketched out some ideas for future ones that are coming out. So production will begin for those soon. And this will tie in perfectly too. I'm excited to have gotten accepted into a winter residency at Penland, which more on that on a future episode. Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Exciting.
But
Congratulations.
essentially, thank you. But essentially, it'll give me an opportunity to develop my sculptural work even further. It's one of those things, like with all these other things, and I know Jackie, you echo some of this too. It's like we have so many things on our plates that they're just areas of our artistic practice that we have to put on the back burner and then bring it back out and then put it back away. And it's
Yeah.
like there's a lot of that, and sculptures is definitely one of them that if if all else fails, they're the ones I have to shelve temporarily in terms of
Mm.
production. Um, they just take a long time. They just take a long time. So sometimes I'm like, I can do painting A to Z, say in a week, and a sculpture. I had several weeks, 2 months sometimes. So
Yeah.
it is
Yeah,
what
and
it
I feel
is.
like
But
everyone has those projects. I mean, as artists, especially as you expand out from like one series or body of work into multiple or different types of projects, as you talked about, going from like products to murals to paintings to
mhm,
sculptures, where like when we first started, that was not, we first started making work intentionally, let me put that way. Like that wasn't something that was necessarily on our radar. We were very in like the exploration phase and probably doing multiple things, but now as each of those things kind of start gaining traction,
mhm.
inevitably we're forced to have to prioritize, okay, ultimately what has to take the third or fourth seat to the other two. And that changes month to month, season to season, week to week, sometimes it feels like, but I'm excited that you may be bringing some of the new sculptures back or resuming them from maybe being put on pause for a bit. So that's very
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah. But how about you? What are you working on?
Oh man, similar to you, many different things, multiple different directions, which I feel like is kind of the name of the season right now for both you and I. So similarly, dabbling a little bit into outdoor murals, which has been so much fun. Of course, I was able to assist you with your amazing mural here in Raleigh. I've also had the amazing experience to assist Taylor White, who is a fellow podcast guest that we had, episode 106. She did a outdoor mural at Dorothy Dix Park, which was super, super fun to assist her on that project, just from a scale standpoint. And again, like you talked about with the meetup that you're going to, just hearing how other people approach the mural, both from a logistics standpoint, how do you transport your materials? How do you translate this digital sketch onto the wall? Is it 100% exact, or which areas do you kind of like fudge or make on-site differences based on the environment? Just like little things that you really only learn on site was super, super helpful to work with her, and has been very helpful now that I doing my first official mural over at State Raleigh, which has been a lot of fun. It's definitely from a smaller scale standpoint to hers. So I don't need assistance or anything like that, but it's triple the size of anything that I've ever painted in my studio. So still very large. So it's at the skate park alongside a handful of other artists who are also doing murals. So it's been really, really fun. Luckily, also in Raleigh, the weather has been a lot nicer. So it's been very enjoyable. Go out there, bring a snack, put some music on, and just experience the painting on the wall sensation. You definitely get a bit of a high from it. I'm like, oh, okay, I can see how this can be a dangerous slippery slope addiction to every time I see walls now. I'm like, oh man, that would look really great with some color on it.
I know, right?
Yeah, you just approach your community space in such a different way because it really
Mhm.
does, like, I mean, and I may be preaching to the choir here, but it does completely transform a space. Like working with Taylor, one day we were like out there painting, and there were runners and joggers and bikers that came through, and they would like stop and talk to us about the design. They're like, this is my daily running route, and normally this is the part of the trail that like maybe I didn't feel the safest in, or like was just clearly a forgotten part of the trail by most people. And then just seeing the gratitude they had for, oh my goodness, this like totally energizes the space and like made people feel more safe, which is huge. Like that's has such a ripple effect beyond you actually being there. So
Mhm.
anyway, so just super excited to venture into that. In addition to dipping my toes into the mural world, kind of going on the opposite scale of scaling up, scaling down, my micro gallery project has its second exhibition, which has been a lot of fun.
Woo!
Kind of similar to you were talking about with sculptures. I feel like this has been a great project for me. For it's one that I'm not putting too much pressure on myself. Of course, as artists and creatives, we have the like 0 to 1,000 game plan of like, okay, I can do like new posts every single day on social media and do all these reels and do all this content, which maybe one day, but I'm very proud that like this month I've been able to do more posts than I did last month, and had the exhibition that's on view in my micro gallery right now, which for those of you who didn't listen to the episode where I mentioned that last time, it's basically a 1 foot by 1 foot by 16-inch bread box that I've turned into a mini art gallery where I have Lego people that are the workers and highlighting the products of the creative process. So rather than the finished work, displaying the sketches and the brainstorming ideas and the paint scraps, things
The
like that.
tape.
Yeah, the tape, all the things. But every month we have different exhibitions. And so it's been fun, like this month's theme, because I knew the skate park mural is my September project. It has to be done by the end of the month. So the art gallery is skate park themed and has like little bikes and skateboards, and it's a lot of
It's
fun.
adorable.
Yeah, so it's been fun, like kind of melding those worlds in a way and allowing the mini gallery to speak to what I'm working on. And I have on display my original sketch that now is being brought to life at human scale at the skate park. So that's been a lot of fun to start kind of finding the voice of that project. Let's see, what else have I been working on? Of course,
Holidays.
holiday prep, holiday. Similar to you, Adriana. I put in a nice order of prints and products last week, which feels really good to have that done. If you listen to our Christmas in July episode, I'm trying to follow those guidelines in terms of I'm allowing myself to kind of have a cutoff at the end of September of anything that I want to do for the holiday season, I'm doing in September. And after that, I almost don't have any obligation to myself to make anything new for the holidays. Just because I know once October hits, like it's a snowball effect to the end of the year. Like things just get busy, there's events, there's things going on. So it's been great in terms of ordering new products that I haven't had before, restocking old products in terms of color catchers or prints. And then next week, so once this episode is aired, hopefully it's already done and they look amazing. But I designated a day in my studio to make original products that I'll have on sale during the holidays. But kind of blocking off that time and say, okay, I have these 2 days. Whatever gets done in the 2 days, great. If I experiment and find that I don't like anything that I make, which also may very well happen, then I like don't have to stress over it or labor off of it. Say like, it's not meant to be this year, go on with the rest of the year. And then finally, from a kind of progressing my art business and education standpoint, I'm super, super excited because, again, at the time of this being live, we would have been 2 weeks into the class, but I was accepted into the public art class with the Durham Arts Guild, which I'm super, super excited about. So my goal for this class really was to, of course, like learn more about public art, the process, where to look for open calls, how to build a strong application. And that's really the focus of this class. And having that intentional time each week, it's weekly over Zoom to just like sit down, talk to classmates, learn from guest speakers that we're going to have. I'm super excited for that because as a creature of habit, I love like having those set things in place, especially weekly. So I'm looking forward to it. Definitely gonna make an event of it every Thursday night, like get my favorite takeout dinner and then like celebrate it as a way of just learning more about the public art world. So I'm very excited about that because especially like scaling up, just dabbling with the Skate Raleigh mural has been such a learning curve in the best way. And it's one of those things where like once you know a little bit, you realize how much you don't know.
Yep.
And so I'm excited to maybe be proactive with learning from other people's experience. And then of course, hitting that wall faster so I can overcome it faster is kind of my goal. So
yeah. Basically one of those what is it? Fail forward fast.
yeah,
Just,
fail fast.
just hit the bump and like get it over with, essentially. No, I love that. And I love how we're both, this is like really funny, you guys. It's like, it's not like Jackie and I plan to both get into some of the same things, but
Yeah,
it's like as the opportunities came up, it was what, like 2 years ago, we were both like, I want to go bigger and bigger. Who want to get a
yeah,
mural? So it's like, I don't know, it's like this alignment. It's very cool, which is
yeah. We
also like
definitely,
super helpful because then we can exchange information too. What about this? Have you tried that? Have you tried this? Which I think also speeds up the learning process since we're both kind of like learning around the same time. Like we're on similar levels as it relates to that part of our artistic practice. Um, versus like let's say you started getting into ceramics all of a sudden, well then that's a completely different level. I've been doing it like almost 2 years now. But no, I love that the mural side of it, like we're both learning around the same time and it's fantastic.
it's
I
so
just love
fun.
it.
And especially from, like you said, like we're able to feed off our own information, but
Yeah.
also I feel like inevitably because we've also invited mural guests onto the podcast and been able to share those conversations with all of our amazing listeners, but even just for ourselves, like every time we interview a guest on the podcast, inevitably what we talk about influences my mindset that week. Like just like for you, our listeners, that when that affects your studio practice or, oh, I'm going to take that negative information or that's great advice. We do the same thing. And that's kind of why we started the podcast because we wanted to have these conversations anyway with so many amazing artists. So having artists like Taylor White, like Morgan Cook, and so many other people, it's really kind of that intrigue of, oh, I think that's something I really want to dive into. So it's been a lot of fun.
I
But
know.
with all these updates and things, as part of our studio update, we always like to highlight the wins and the struggles that we've had in our studio practice lately. So, Adriana, what have been the wins and struggles that you've been facing head on?
Well, I want to start with the good stuff. Honestly, it's always a mixed bag because as small business owners, we wear so many hats. And we're throwing spaghetti at the wall sometimes, see what sticks, and it doesn't all stick, and that's okay too. So on the positive side of things, I've had more success with delegation. It was really, really hard at first, for sure. You all have heard me talk about this in the past, but essentially, like whether it's something like hiring a photographer instead of just trying to set up the tripod and do everything myself.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the first things a lot of artists delegate to is like getting photography done, or working with an assistant. Who can enter like information about upcoming exhibitions into a database. I mean, that's administrative work that can be delegated. It's allowed me to focus more time on the things that cannot be delegated and on bigger opportunities where let's just I don't know if you've all heard of this concept of decision fatigue, but like if you're just constantly, and I mean this is how social media and our general technological
Yeah.
world works in a way, but you know how you have like all these competing priorities bombarding you like day in day out and everything else. If you're getting like sucked in into doing the nitty gritty of everything in your business, then it's like you're almost like wearing blinders to the bigger picture of where you want to get. Um, so basically like looking at the day to day and seeing what can I delegate. I've probably mentioned this, before here, but definitely in person. Expansion requires delegation. And I actually, in preparation of this episode, I actually had to look back at the episode we did, the studio update we did in 2023, where we were talking about goals for this year. And definitely that's something that came up in there. It was like expansion and like trying to think about that. So that has been super duper helpful. So that's definitely a win. It's hard to give up control. I will just say that it's hard to let someone else take care of some of that for you, but it's also very liberating once it comes back. And yeah, I love that. Um, I've also been another 2023 goal that has been happening, so I'm happy to report back on this one. I've been allowing myself to rest a bit more. I am definitely a workaholic or can come off as one. Um, so I've been trying to maintain a balance of the admin tasks and the art making time without letting either one bring out the burnout mode. Um, Honestly, it's like some of the things like the murals and commission work can be very like admin heavy. And then if I enter admin mode, then it's hard to switch to painting mode or, creative mode sometimes. So I got to strike a balance. If I do too much admin, then I get kind of cranky because I need to make art. Like I have to like the actual action of doing the thing. So balancing that out. And then I've been taking some baby steps towards expanding the teaching part of my practice. It's something I've always loved to do. And I find it integral to what I do as an artist, right? Like it's one of the ways in which I evolve. Um, it's not just like the part of giving back, which I absolutely adore, but it's like whenever you're teaching somebody else, you have to cement or solidify more of those concepts that you're teaching and like gain even more clarity to help somebody else who's not clear, right? But you have to be solid yourself first. So, depending on what it is about, I don't know, I find it very, very helpful to kind of work through that process to then, I mean, it just ends up evolving my own process too while I'm at it. A little time consuming, but I think it's worth it. And then on the not so positive, but still not terrible side of things, also all things considered. Unlike my painting practice where I can go from idea to reality in a few days or weeks. Like I said, murals, public art projects have longer timelines, and patience is a virtue I don't always enjoy. Um, so sometimes I'm like, but can I paint it tomorrow? Like, can I paint it next week? Like, and it doesn't work that way. So I'm working with that part. I am feeling those little fuzzies of impatience, and I just have to like I'm learning to just kind of be a little more patient with that. And obviously like there's never enough hours in the day. Even with delegating, I still have so much that I want to do, so it's like reprioritizing things. Otherwise, it's just this constant feeling of running out of time. So I'm working on that. And then speaking of time, like I do want to make a video again, and I haven't made as many as I've wanted to, which is was a big goal, still is. Um, but I'm always like thinking of it versus like the art making time. And I can't, no, I can't sacrifice video for social media or for whatever, for online consumption, when at the end of the day, my number one job is to make the art itself, right? So constant struggle. So, anyways, the common theme on this side of things is just like, to summarize it all, of course, it's just like this idea of um, essentially being a little more patient. And it's okay to not have all the hours in the day to all the things, and work in progress. And it's
Yeah.
okay to be work in progress.
So true, so true. That's definitely something that I am also struggling with recently, which I feel like everyone struggles with that in some regards, in terms of
Yeah.
like time restraints on all of their big priorities. It may be multiple art projects that you want to get done. It may be personal life commitments, other obligations with your art practice. And so I think that's definitely a universal feeling that everyone has. Like, no matter what industry, no matter which phase of life, oftentimes it can feel like there's not enough time to do everything. If
Mm-mm.
you are that like visionary creative that just wants to do more and more, bring things to life. So that's definitely been one of my struggles recently as well. Definitely working on delegating a bit more and brainstorming what that looks like for my art business. Um, because ultimately that time restraint I'm finding is becoming a bottleneck in my workflow, especially as I've talked about in other previous updates. I've been very intentional with keeping a good work-life balance, which we'll talk about later. But so that's been really rewarding, but ultimately it has meant having to make sacrifices of how quickly I would like things to get done for putting my health and well-being first, which ultimately is worth it. But you know, it's always that balance. So one thing that I had been doing, which I honestly don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast before. I feel like I probably may have in other episodes, but 3 years ago, I actually read a book that I single-handedly say like changed my life, and that's not an exaggeration. So I read 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And so I found it again recently, and it was just like thumbing through it. And I'm a very active reader. I don't know if anyone else got that like elementary school lesson of like underlining things and highlighting. And I took that very to heart, apparently. Like I have to have a pen in my hand when I'm reading a book. So it's cool being able to go back to that book and see what I underlined or what stood out to me 3 years ago. And there's things that are honestly even more applicable now. So a lot of his book is about delegating and really making sure that how you spend your time in your day is in line with the life that you want to have. So highly suggest it. 4 Hour Work Week. He goes from the big picture vision of life and then breaks it down into logistics. But when I first found the book, one of the things that I saw was underlined right away was the first page I opened to. And he said, being busy shows lack of focus for what you truly want. And I was just like mind blown, like, okay. And I think that's one thing that a lot of us struggle with, and that it's okay, well, you feel like you have to do all of these things, which will be one of my wins too, but figuring out what to actually prioritize to move the ball forward in my business, because I love the admin side of the work. I feel like it is part of my creative practice, and that it helps me really crystallize the meaning behind my work, how I explain it to people, how I present it. So even though it's not quote unquote the creative studio time, for me, it really helps in my workflow. But it is that difference of working in your business versus working on your business,
Mhm.
as we talk about. So the difference of doing the admin work that in theory can be delegated versus tackling projects such as drawing proposals for a new mural or brainstorming a new series. Having that mental space to allow yourself to get into that creative mode takes mental space, and you can't do that if it's clogged with so many other things. So that's one thing I guess that I've been struggling to wrap my head around, of just because I can do everything doesn't mean that I should be doing everything.
Yeah.
Which is hard when you enjoy so many pieces of your business, but just because so figuring out what's delegatable. So I'm rereading 4-Hour Work Week, which has been so helpful. And it's fun also just like revisiting a book that now has new application to where I am in life. And so, yeah. So not a bunch of studio or design time currently, which I guess would be one of the struggles. I'm definitely going to be changing that with this public art class, in terms of they're almost, with each proposal, it's like a project specific. So I'm excited to be diving into more designs there, continuing to brainstorm how my work scales up, and in new locations, which will be fun. But I think with that comes my biggest win since our last studio update is being a lot better about constantly reevaluating my priorities. And one thing that I have, especially from a like micro scale, not just, okay, what do I want to do, but okay, today, logistically, when you time block your day, like what is one thing that I can get done today that that my future self is going to be happy that I prioritized. And some days that is going to the gym and getting a workout in. Like if I get nothing else done, I know I mentally need that. And I'm going to like finish the day proud that I did that. Some days it's prioritizing painting time over going to the gym because I know that's what me mentally, physically need right now. Some days it's an application that has a deadline that I'm going to be really excited that I already have done, or designing a new art product. And so it's always changing, but kind of giving myself that grace to know, okay, over anything else, if I do just this one thing, anything in addition to that is a bonus. And allowing myself to see the days like that has been super helpful from the work-life balance standpoint. Always checking in with, okay, if I'm feeling burnt out and trying to do this admin task, reflecting like, okay, if I was a boss to myself, which we all are in our own businesses, saying, okay, well, Jackie, you've worked 7 hours already today on this computer task. You do not need to start a 4-hour project right now. Like you've done your work today. Like that would be a crappy boss to have, to be like, you must stay in this chair until it gets done. And oftentimes we talk to ourselves like that without even realizing it. So obviously we're all very limited on time, and work-life balance wise, that's been the biggest thing of just what is one thing I can do each day. And then by the end of the week, there may be 10 things that get put on the back burner, but if I did those handful of things that I wanted to very intentionally prioritize, then I'm good to go. So hopefully that helps someone else too.
Yeah, I love that. I use the critical, well, some people call it critical 6. Mine's more of a critical 3, but it'll be like 3 things to do today that I have to do. Or at least not necessarily finish, but definitely like put, one foot in front of the other and baby step them, so to speak, to move them forward. So yeah, I absolutely love that. Well, next up, we're going to be talking about how our studio updates online. We're going to be doing our sustainability check-in. But first, let's put in a quick word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by the Level Up Artists Business Community. This ever-evolving membership values community over competition and growing connections with fellow creatives who share the same goals and challenges as you.
Life as a modern artist can be both exciting and overwhelming. Art school or self-taught, emerging or seasoned professional, there's a lot of information out there, but what do working artists actually need?
Other industries have continuing education programs for their professionals to sharpen up their skills and stay up to date with the systems, technology, and tools needed to succeed. And we believe that artists should too.
We've spent countless hours of trial and error weeding through tons of information to find the gold and creating sustainable systems that actually work so you don't have to waste your time going down endless rabbit holes.
We are passionate about exchanging ideas and sharing resources with fellow career-minded artists about the business side of art. From artist documents and exhibition prep to templates and tools to help you work faster and smarter, our course modules cover everything from social media to technology and sustainable studio practices too.
Ready to get started? Head on over to levelupartisthub.com to learn more, get immediate access, and level up your creative career today.
Welcome back, everyone. So one thing that we also like to do with our studio updates is share how we are sharing our studio practice online, because as modern day artists, that is a huge part of marketing. So Adriana, how have you been sharing your studio practice online?
Whew. Okay, so I've talked about this one before and it still rings true. I get enthusiasm for social media in short bursts. So I'm like, oh, yeah, I have stuff to share. Boom, boom, boom. I'll put it out there. And then I'm like, not feeling it. Does this really work? Which the answer is yes, it does. But more like I don't want to show up unless it feels authentic, but I don't want that to also be the excuse to not show up. So I'm experimenting with ways in which I can revive my love for it. More to come on this as I figure this one out. I do know that at least the murals on walls or on canvas, they've been fun to make reels out of. So that's going to continue. So that is an excuse and a way to show up. And I am planning more video content. I've always liked the video side of things. Definitely more on the long form, but I'm figuring out or basically taking a long, hard look at what my process is like and trying to see, is there anything in there that I can cut out or be more efficient about to make it a shorter time frame. Essentially, or to put it in a few words, if doing a 13-second reel is going to take me 2 hours, that's a waste of my time. I don't care how many views it's going to get. That's a waste of my time. I'd rather be painting, to be honest. But if I can figure out, okay, can I do this reel in 30 minutes instead? Okay, that feels a lot more accessible, especially considering all the other projects that I have. So taking a long, hard look at my processes, essentially, in order to increase what I'm sharing online. That's the plan. That's the plan.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
How about you, Jackie?
Yes. So I feel like sharing online wise, of course, as someone who also works in social media, digital content creation for other small businesses as part of my day job, it's something that I really love doing. It's definitely another creative outlet for me. But it has been fun with especially this Skate Raleigh mural of sharing more reels of the process. That's one thing from a painting standpoint in my studio. I'll often take videos or time-lapse videos, but because I'm working on so many different projects at one time, I sometimes find it hard to force urgency on when to share them. So kind of similar to you, Adriana, like I have folders of just like what I call B-roll footage in my studio, like paint peels and time lapse of paintings, or like just walking around doing a million different things. But because there's not like a timeline of, oh, well, this is one painting beginning to end because I work at 5 at one time, I don't really find an urgency to, I have to post this today, which has taught me something with this Skate Raleigh mural, and that I've been wanting to be intentional about bringing people on social media along the journey with me, which I find really rewarding. But I found that I kind of have to post, for me mentally, post the day that I make that progress. Or else I kind of lose steam with it. Or I'm like, oh yeah, I'll totally post that in the morning. And then it's been like 3 days. And then now it wouldn't make sense if I post today's progress because I hadn't updated the narrative for followers of what I did 3 days ago. So I don't know. It's just been a learning lesson in that. Something I've really been having fun with in terms of experimenting with reels that are just music or reels versus voiceovers. I love doing the voiceovers just because I feel like it's more personal. I normally do it in like 1 or 2 takes. Even if I like stumble over my words, I'm just kind of like, oh, whatever, that's going up. Like that's how I would tell someone in person of what I'm doing. Trying really not to overthink it, or over stylize it. And I found that it really hasn't been as intrusive of the creative process for the mural because I am really just executing a design that I already planned. Because that's another element that I find in terms of video content in my studio practice is I don't want to feel like I'm performing for my creative energy if I'm like brainstorming a new painting. Of course, if you're doing a painting, you can always just like not use the footage if it like goes badly or turning it into a learning lesson, whatever. But because it's more executing a design, I don't find it intrusive that I'm doing a time-lapse video of me painting, if that makes sense. So that's been super helpful. I think also because earlier this month, I planned out static content for social media, as well as the newsletter topics that I would have every single week for the month. So that is a huge testament to how much planning can help. So looking at the month in advance and not saying I have to plan a post every single day, but like 2 posts a week for Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. And that's a very rewarding feeling when I woke up and I saw that 2 hours ago, a post was made on my Instagram that I had written 3 weeks ago. And it's something evergreen. It's always going to be applicable, but it's nice knowing that I don't have to post, if that makes sense. So I don't know, doing planning up front that then takes the pressure off, that gives you the creative space to then post if you feel motivated. But if you don't feel motivated, then you don't have to. So it's been super rewarding to kind of like take that pressure off and just make it more fun, which has been great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, time for our sustainability check-in.
Oh man.
I know. It's like with all these things that we're sharing, I imagine some of the folks listening are going like, how do you stay sane?
Yeah.
I know. It's kind of a miracle for sure. No, it's a constant balance. That's
Very
the truth.
intentional.
Yeah, don't let our social medias fool you. It's a lot. This is why we do these kind of episodes down to earth and kind of show you all behind the scenes. Like, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I have to say this time, I am happy to report that full steam ahead. Things are going great, so I'm very excited, to see how the rest of this quarter will develop, with all the different projects going on. Some that I'm like, please say yes. Here's the magical proposal, and hopefully some happy updates will come out of those later on. But for now, I'm trying not to think too far ahead. Which again, it's kind of something you mentioned, Jackie. It's almost like we can imagine the next 5 years of our career in like 30 seconds. It's ridiculous. Yeah. There's no way. There's no way we would really know what that looks like. I mean, it's good to project, don't get me wrong, and manifest and all that kind of good stuff, but also like, take a step back, take a breather, right? But essentially I'm trying to focus on things that are a little bit closer. So like I mentioned earlier, I am looking forward to the trip to Dominican Republic, and also because it's actually split into, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but it's split into the first week. It's not art related. There'll be like scuba diving and water activities and like probably seeing museums. Okay, that's kind of an art activity, but it's not business. And then the second part is the meetup part. So I'm kind of excited about that. And again, excited about residencies and other projects. So more to come on that. But I think giving myself the permission to have more rest pockets honestly has been what's been helping me. And I don't feel this whole, like, sometimes around this time of the year is when I'm freaking out about like holiday stuff. So I don't know. It feels really good this time. Check back with me in a couple weeks and we'll discuss.
That's true. That's true. Like
But
it's
right
the
now,
calm before
good.
the storm of
Yeah,
the holiday season.
Yes.
Oh goodness. Yeah, from a sustainability standpoint, I feel like I'm also feeling really good. I think because of that intentional time that I have been prioritizing the work-life balance. It sounds strange, but it is connected with my studio practice. But honestly, having a more regular gym routine has been super, super helpful, both like going to the gym, playing volleyball outside. I also have a walking treadmill that if I'm doing a long day of admin work, it's like a stand-up desk with treadmill, which isn't like a super high impact workout, but if you're zoning out into admin work and all of a sudden you look like I just walked 3 miles and I forgot that I was walking. But that's been a huge win, one from just like overall energy standpoint, but I think also, especially dabbling into murals now with the Skate Raleigh mural, the endurance that being physically strong builds is super, super important when you're on site at a project, when you're bending over, leaning over, doing larger scale. It is a very physically demanding creative act. Even just number of hours I can be on my feet in the studio when I'm painting. I don't sit down and paint. I'm always up and moving and doing circles around my table kind of thing.
Same.
And that takes endurance and stamina and strength. So I've been really loving both the day-to-day feeling of just prioritizing that again, but also it's really honestly impacted my studio practice and be able to be more present. And then the other big win that I had, it's still very new, so I wasn't even gonna share it on here, but I started picking up the piano again, because I played when I was a little kid, and I just found this itch to want to start playing again. And I realized this summer that it was because I wanted to have a creative outlet that I didn't have to have any expectations on. Which honestly, I feel like we could do a full episode on it and a whole conversation on how your relationship with your art practice changes once you start treating it like a business. And that's not a criticism and it's not a negative. It's just an observation I found for me of it is something that I love doing and it is so fulfilling, but it is a job in a way. Like it is a job because I have goals, I have financial goals, I have milestones I want to hit. So it does shift my relationship with it versus just I'm going to do a little painting today and then maybe never paint something for 3 more months, you know? So I really wanted to have a non-business creative hobby. Also one that was off of the screen because looking at a computer screen for 9-10 hours a day. And then even if I were to do, I don't know, I have friends that are super into video games, which is great, but I'm like, I've just been looking at a screen all day. I don't want to have my hobby relaxing time be on a screen.
Yep.
Definitely there are the evenings of Netflix and binge watching shows, don't get me wrong, but just realizing kind of like mental health wise that I want something like that. Plus just the hand-eye coordination, the problem solving, using my brain in a new way has been super, super fun. So I'm excited just to dive into that more. Again, it's not something I'm going to be like sharing on social media a bunch or like, I don't know, having some milestones kind of behind the scenes, but just enjoying the process, which I'm very excited for, especially as we enter into the winter months. If I get snowed in at my house, I have my little like creative corner, as I now call it. I have a drawing desk at my house and then a piano right next to it. So just kind of dabble from one to the other, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, and it takes some pressure off knowing it's not something for sale, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of like you mentioned, like your relationship does change
Mhm.
with your art the moment you do it. And depending what else you grab is whether or not that can also turn into something that becomes
Business.
part of your art practice. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And also with all this, like not discounting, like if you're listening to this, obviously most of the people we talk to through this podcast do have or want to build and or maintain and or reignite an art career, with the profit side of it included. But obviously, if you're listening to this and you're like, no, I just do art on the side, that's fine too. You know,
Yeah.
it's great to have goals for it. And if you're not selling it, I mean, enjoy, honestly, enjoy
Yeah.
it. It's a lot of fun, obviously, and you take it wherever you want. But we hope you really enjoyed this studio update and gave you a good behind the scenes look at how we run our art practices, the good, the bad, and the ugly, like the
Yeah.
saying goes, but mostly the good, obviously. So thank you so much for listening today.
Yes, and as always, our blog will be linked in today's show notes where you can find episode notes and links to all of our other podcast episodes.
And if you want to stay connected with us in between episodes, share your feedback, or have a question you would like for us to answer on social media, I'm at May Art across all platforms.
And I'm at J Sanders Studio on all platforms. And if you want to follow the podcast, we are at Level Up Artists on Instagram. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.